announcement before we get started, and then I will let Mitch take over and adjourn the meeting. So let me just quickly, for anyone who's participating or watching on the Facebook account or on our YouTube channel, it looks like we don't have any attendees on Zoom right now. But if you're participating in that way, you can call to leave a voice recording for public comment. You'll be prompted to either enter number 1, which is to leave a comment for the NFP map and text amendments, or you can leave a general comment, which we'll listen to at the end of the meeting, closer to the end of the meeting, by dialing 2. And the number you call is 269-226-6573. Again, to leave public comment as a voice recording, you can call 269-226-6573. And Mitch, I will let you adjourn the meeting.
All right. Thanks everybody for coming. Looks like we got a good crowd. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order and ask if Jamie can do a roll call for us.
Yes. Colwick.
Present.
Fuller.
Here.
Glasser.
Here.
Leto.
Here.
McNellis. I see that you're here.
All right, here.
Yep, exactly. Martin.
Here.
And then Alan Sylvester let us know that he was unable to attend, so he is excused.
All right. Can I entertain a motion to excuse absent member Sylvester?
So move.
Second.
All right. Motion passes.
Well,
And then,
Mitch, if you can ask everyone to yay or nay.
oh, sorry. Everyone in
Officially.
favor? Everyone in favor? Yay?
Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, next item, the agenda that Jamie has laid out for us. Can I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented here?
So moved.
Okay, support by Ashley.
Sure.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And then the item D on our agenda is new business. So it sounds like no new business. We're looking at this as old business we're tying up some loose ends.
That's correct. No new business.
Okay, so we're actually on item E then, old business. Yeah, recommendation that the NFP Review Board approve amendments to the Natural Features Protection Overlay District and related zoning code. And Jamie has a kind of a presentation or summary for us.
Yeah, let me share my screen and show you where we're at here. Give me a moment. Okay, so you should be able to see the slides on my screen. As Mitch mentioned, this is a continuation of a conversation and sort of an evaluation, I would say, that the board started at the previous meeting 2 weeks ago on September 29, where you all took a look at some recommended amendments to the NFP overlay district, a pretty extensive list of additions to that map. And then also we had talked about a little bit longer list of text amendments. And I know, we've kind of been talking about those, and there's been some feelings both ways, right? That we needed to make probably some adjustments, but maybe we give it another year, since we've only, had this ordinance in place for a year and have probably done, 6 or 7 reviews so far, that you all wanted to kind of see how this works over the next year, and then we'll revisit some updates. I know there's also some work that staff and the board can continue to do in the meantime, looking at some of our species lists and really diving into those. And so we know that we're going to need a little bit more time for that. So I'm going to present some of the map changes very briefly. I'll go over what we talked about last time, and then a few public comments we've since gotten about the map. And then I'll talk a little bit about the sort of very minimal what I'm hoping is a more minimal set of text amendments that we could adopt and recommend to the Plan Commission this time around. So if you remember, this was the last slide that we looked at our meeting 2 weeks ago, and what it said was, hey, we've gotten some public comments, rather significant number of public comments. I know we spent a lot of time kind of going through all of the areas where we were getting multiple comments, kind of all related to similar features, maybe connected to and related to other natural areas. And so this was our list of, okay, these are the areas that I heard from the board you were in support of adding to the already sort of built out and expanded NFP map. So what was sent to you last Friday and what we posted publicly was essentially the map that we looked at on the 29th, plus all of these parcels added in for the most part. So I think one of the best ways for me to share this is hopefully to just bring up the web map, because I do want to thank our IT department for having created, I think, what is a much easier to navigate web map using our ArcGIS Pro that we have now. So let me give it a second to load.
Yeah, I thought the web map was great. So kudos to whoever or what group of people developed that. It was super easy.
Ben Clark is newer to our ID department this year and was able to spend some time and create this and make it easy for us to embed into the website. So yeah, this is something I'm hoping to use again in the future. When we did the surveying before, at least at that time, we didn't know a way to use this. Maybe there is a way, but being able to drop pins and give us survey information, that was not as smooth of a viewer as I think this one is. So just for your orientation, I know you've taken a look at this, but essentially what I asked, the colors look a little bit different. And I asked Ben to start thinking about how do we take this from a whole bunch of work that you guys have been doing, really like evaluating, looking, seeing where we have overlaps. It was just a very working body of information. And now we're starting to kind of smooth it out. So if you can imagine what the green represents is going to be what will look like the brand new total NFP overlay district. It'll be the new district probably in the new year once we get through the Plan Commission in November, and then hopefully City Commission would adopt it in December. So you can imagine, we're going to have to show them what the new overlay district looks like in its entirety. And so that would be green here. But what I thought would be really helpful is to be able to at least show people what's the current overlay district. So the current overlay district is all outlined in orange. So you can see we had stuff kind of here along Stadium Drive, a little bit south, and then it was heavily dependent upon this river and stream corridor, the Kalamazoo River and Portage Creek. And then what is outlined here in pink is all of the parcels that are being proposed to be added to the district. So those are pink here. And then you can identify just a handful of smaller parcels, not smaller parcels, but a handful of parcels that have an orange outline, but they're not green. So that means that they are actually a few parcels that are being recommended to be removed from the NFP overlay district. There were just a few. I don't think we touched on these too much last time, but the way we created the map this time, they became a lot more obvious, which is helpful. But if you notice, these were parcels that probably at one time were great wooded parcels or had significant natural features. And then when we kind of looked through the lens of what is threatened to be developed and what's already been developed and impacted, a couple of these fell off. So you can see this one here is, all housing now. I think there was one down this way. Some parcels in here which are houses, and there's like this is the former Big Lots area over here. So so we put this map out, like I said, last Friday, and we had 3 comments in total, and all of them were kind of they're very specific to areas where maybe we didn't have coverage already. So I sent those to you in a memo, but I wanted to cover those as well. one of the areas that, let me go back to my slides. One of the areas that was brought up was, again, back to this area at East Stockbridge and Lake, right? So we're here by Portage Creek and Stockbridge. This is a city-owned facility here. And through the phase 2 mapping, we identified these parcels here as having significant natural features and adding them to the map. And then we took a closer look when folks from the neighborhood said, hey, we feel like it needs a bit more coverage. There is a very small little wetland in the middle of this area that's identified under the National Wetlands Inventory. But the way the comment reads is that we should really be expanding this area a little bit to the west, and especially the backyards of some of these houses. And so here I wanted to show you kind of how this woodland kind of, you know, covers beyond. This parcel here is the one highlighted here. So, I mean, it is all in the backyards of these individual parcels. And then this one is an undeveloped lot, it appears, that's wooded. This is a Dollar General or a dollar store of some sort. So storefront here at the front of the property. And then I don't know how well of there's some clearing here, I guess. I don't think it's used as parking. I don't even know if it's asphalt, but you know, some clearing has happened back here. And so you can kind of see the nature of this area changes when we finally get to backyards back here. So I wanted to leave that up for the board to discuss, you know, do we expand onto these parcels, especially along Lake Street? It is an important area that a lot of commenters brought up, that they felt it was one of the last sort of natural green spaces in this part of town. Next, we had one commenter mention that there were some lots out near Arboretum Parkway, Kensington area that weren't in the overlay district. So for instance, we included the school here. This is very developed, but then we see this sort of wood lot back here, and then it's not perfectly connected, but definitely, you know, this is an undeveloped parcel here. So this was one address that came up. They also mentioned that through here, there's some slope and woodland. This feels similar to the Oakland Drive area, but I'm not particularly familiar with it. And then there was one other parcel that this commenter noted, which is, it's owned by the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, and it has a permanent deed restriction for no development in the future. So I didn't add that one onto the list here. It was also not added on to our NFP overlay district for that sort of similar reason. But that one's up at West Michigan and Drake. It's very sloped there, as you can imagine, and it's on the northeast corner. And then the last comments we got, this I thought was really important for everyone to take a look at. This was one of the reasons I think we had decided, the board had decided to chair or to table this item and do a little bit more engagement after our last meeting, which was a set of comments and areas highlighted by Dr. Tyler Bassett. And so he, you know, I made sure to send him the new updated map and ask for his opinion. Did the areas that we had added onto the map, since he had looked at it previously, did that seem to reflect the areas he was concerned about? And his comment was, for the most part, yes, it seems like they do seem to cover the areas he was talking about. He did give us some parcel numbers, which were hard for me to navigate only because of the format that he gave us. But overall, it sounded like the areas added to the map cover his areas of concern.
Are those the addresses, Jamie? Because I was looking at that too. It seems like on the city GIS, you pull it up and it's listed as a PIN, like a 10-digit PIN number. And I'm wondering if he's just talking about the address.
Yeah, and that's why I couldn't look up an address without a street name. And yeah, I wasn't able to look those up specifically. And we just got this feedback a day or so ago. So I don't know if anybody else had any other comments or thoughts when they looked at this, or when they when we talked last week about, or 2 weeks ago, about the areas that Tyler had suggested we glance at. So anyway, let's, I guess to get some
Paul's-
feedback, we
Paul's
can,
got something.
oh, go ahead, Paul. We can start with that one.
Yeah, I read the narrative about that, about a lot of that. Actually, I've gotten some comments from some people about the corridors, the movement of wildlife and the associated spread of a lot of the flora through. But I look at that and I say, yeah, that would be really neat, but that's going to take, to me, that's going to take a lot more intuitive study to understand exactly what those corridors are. So I'd hate to just load up a whole bunch of property right now. Anyway. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm rambling now. That's what I was thinking about. Mitch, you know what I'm talking about with corridors. I mean, you've been studying the shit out of them, so yeah.
Yeah, no, we've just been working on a big corridor project, and like something we think about a lot. So I'm happy to see that a lot of the parcels in the sort of proposed NFP2 align in kind of linear. I mean, there's all sorts of roads crossing them, obviously, but they align in kind of linear connected ways so that we're not just picking, isolated pieces where there's likely to have natural features retained in the future that are going to help things be able to move through the landscape. And so from that level, I kind of, if I see a small, and I struggle with it a little bit, I see a small isolated parcel, and I sort of wonder whether it's makes sense to include in the whole, but I suspect that a lot of those were chosen by the community input. And I think that ultimately, if our goal was to get community input on the places that the community values and thinks are important, then we have to kind of maybe separate that from that concept a little bit. I think if it's completely developed, then I think that's an easy one. But I think even if it's isolated, I see the good corridors, and there's a few that are isolated. Also happy to see that it seems like we have a good spread throughout the different neighborhoods. I know the K College group came in and talked a little bit about equity and natural features throughout the city. And so, I mean, to me, it looks like in kind of all corners of the city, the most urbanized downtown area probably being the holdout for obvious reasons, but Douglas and some of the north side and the east side neighborhoods and a lot in the southwest corner and Millwood, it seems like we've got that kind of spread too. But I hear you, Paul. I think I don't know how you kind of anticipate this, Jamie, but it's definitely going to be more projects in the agenda, I think, going forward. So yeah, I think it's a balance of those two things.
Yeah, and certainly you see the cutoff with what used to be state trunk lines, right? We see the Westnedge Park split, and then I sort of see this the M43 business loop kind of divider as well, and those are the same sort of challenges that all corridors face, right? I was going to mention though, Paul, if you wouldn't mind, I'm thinking we should probably put this on maybe our next agenda, but for sure in November. I'd love to get some input if we're talking about some of our, corridor strategy or more study or things that we want to get done to explore a little bit more about ways we could protect corridors or think of them or think of our different natural areas and connections between those and how we manage those. That would be really, really useful for our sustainability strategy planning that we're, going to really start cranking up here at the end of the year and in the beginning of 2021. And so I'd love to talk to you guys all about how, maybe it's not the NFP tool because we've all mentioned, right? Like it it only goes so far. It controls development on these lands. It doesn't tell us what to do with areas that are highly degraded. How do we restore those? How do we prioritize those in the city? So let's keep that in mind for a future meeting. Any other comments on Dr. Bassett's comments? Otherwise, I'd like to go back to our other two. So anything left on Tyler's comments?
I get the sense that we pretty much covered them. It would just be good to, if we can have a staff member or something follow up with the addresses that he left and just make sure we have them covered. It seems like, given the narrative, that we got them pretty well.
I just
Yeah,
did a really quick look on just Google, and for this, at least the Stadium Drive parcels, it looks, I think those are all Stadium Drive addresses. And I think I mean, I didn't check every single one, but we've got a lot of that Stadium Drive area covered, I think.
Thanks, Erin. That's helpful. Ashley, were you going to speak up?
Oh, I was just saying I was having a hard time the parcel numbers in Tyler's email versus finding those on, but we have really good coverage in those areas as far as this most recent map goes. So I think, yeah.
Okay, thoughts about if we go back to the East Stockbridge and Lake Street area? You know, are we only covering half, and do we want to expand? I guess it would start with this parcel at 210 over through 105. Do we add in 205? It seems like it gets wetter in the center here, kind of around this little blip of a wetland. And then we get drier out here just with the infill, with the fill that probably was put for development there.
When I was going through and looking at some of the parcels that I suggested in that email, I kind of found myself seeing where either the community members or the board had sort of identified a parcel of importance, and then seeing if, you know, sort of assuming whatever natural features seem to be present on the site, assuming that that's why they were selected, then just trying to sort of put a buffer around that one and make sure we're consistent where that feature carries on to the other parcels. And some of them are small, but I think that, like, for the woodland one, you know, if it's under a certain size, there's different, you know, flexibility limitations that they can have in terms of percentage of area they can remove and that sort of thing. So I see those ones to the west as just kind of being consistent with the reasoning that we've already used.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, are these all privately owned, or is there any of them that the city has control?
I can check that. I believe they are all private.
Okay.
It'll take a minute to load, but yeah.
I'm inclined to include them, at least pass it on to the to you guys, to the planning
commission.
Yeah, I tend to agree with including them as well, just because of the citizen comments, and it seems, yeah. Sorry, run on sentences from my brain today, but yes.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to add then probably through that 105 at the Lake Street side of things, and then at least 205 on East Stockbridge. We did get a lot of public comment on that, and again, as a reminder, I think Paul made a good point here, right? Like, this is a recommending body. All of these owners need to be given public notice so that they in fact know that their properties are up for rezoning, and then you know, they can speak to the planning commission and be able to talk to them, and that the planning commission also is a body that recommends to the city commission. So I think all of your justifications from the sort of ecological or natural feature side of things really make sense, right? That's how you're drawing your boundaries. So include those. I can add those for sure.
Jamie, what are those other two on Stockbridge? The two long, skinny ones?
On Stockbridge, these?
Yes.
Those are two homes there as well. They
Okay.
may be. I'm going to click on my map and see here. It's just taking a moment to load.
And they look like they back up to commercial property, or not back up, but the east side of the second one, 313. I can't quite make it out, but yeah.
This is City of Kalamazoo Stockbridge Facility.
Okay.
So
Yep. So
I
you start
noticed-
seeing this parking lot here. It's a massive parking lot and then some buildings, but almost all asphalt.
I noticed
Okay.
that too in the GIS map for the NFP phase 2 that city property is included, and it is like right on Portage Creek, but it is also completely hardscaped. So I know we've kind of struggled with that gray area, but is your slide suggesting that that's not part of the NFP phase 2? The GIS browsing version has it included.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know why you're right. My map doesn't show it highlighted, but this is because it was from a couple weeks ago. And I probably just did a screen capture from a different mapping application. Yes, the Stockbridge facility, as far as I know, that one's, I think that one's always been in NFP.
So
Yeah.
can we add that 307 and 313 also?
Those are
That's what
already in
that's what
for
I'm
phase
proposing.
2. Yep. So yeah. So all of these are now added into phase 2. This was already in phase 1 because regardless if we had a parcel that was highly developed, if it was adjacent to water body, we left it in. So that's phase 1. All of these, the pink and the blue, are already included in our brand new phase 2 map. And so then the public comment this weekend was, folks in our neighborhood don't feel like this boundary went far enough west. So I will work to add in those 6 parcels to kind of give better coverage, kind of complete coverage of that little woodlot and wetland area back there. And that's what we'll recommend that will be included as part of the recommendation that you all give to the Plan Commission. Okay, let's pop over to Arboretum Parkway and spend a couple of minutes on this one, and then I'll talk text amendments. We are trying to get wrapped up here at 5 o'clock because our awesome IT staff have another public meeting to do virtually this evening. So thoughts for Arboretum Parkway, there are a few pockets I would, definitely hadn't before, but noticed that this here is a wooded, somewhat large parcel back here, rather large for the city parcel back here. And then we have this sort of wooded areas here kind of wrapping around the neighborhood to the north. We have a lot of, let me bring up the map for you a minute. We have a lot of parcels over here that are being added generally. We have a lot of this connection here. There's another one of those orange ones that is technically removed from the NFP phase 1 because once these condos were finalized, the parcel lines kind of moved on us. So now we're capturing kind of all of this area. And then we have the school here with that woodlot. And so this is the parcel that was in question or the commenter brought up. And then some of the woods around here. Although we have kind of all this area connected to campus. So we just didn't go into the sort of individual residential lots.
Jamie, can you change the base map on this to an aerial? Is that possible?
Yes.
Yeah, when I was looking at this, I had I'm not familiar with that area back there, but just north of Weaver, Was that mentioned by the public that there's a gap in woods between north of Weaver, kind of Weaver and Kendall? I remember someone mentioning that. And I feel like we're missing something, between Weaver and Arboretum where it turns into Solon.
Yeah, generally speaking, we felt like there were we talked about quite a few comments last time. Maybe it was a recorded comment that we had heard that was just a little bit hard for us to navigate, like, were they talking about some of this on Stolen Street? But that's sort of what we chalked it up to, but perhaps you're right. Maybe it's more south here to all of this wooded area. We definitely look like we cover the big parcels.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those parcels are long and skinny from those houses on Weaver, going kind of north and to the west. It's just if you scale really far back and you look at the whole area of the city, that's kind of one of the main forested areas that isn't included. And I'm just wondering if we captured the public's comments, because Kendall seems to just end right there, it does end right there before Arboretum / Howard. And I'm just curious if we properly interpreted that.
It seems like it would make sense. I mean, it's like the kind of the spirit of the public comments. Like we got the specific parcels, it sounds like, but like Ashley's saying, I think if we can kind of keep that consistency with the spirit of what they're suggesting, maybe it wasn't those literal parcels, but I think that makes sense.
On the other hand, that seems like I don't have the parcel. I just have the aerial instead of the parcels, but I feel like it might be adding a lot of parcels if, that I'm not sure really the value, like, is there, with how much NFP is on kind of the north side of that area? Is it, I don't know. I'm just curious what everyone else thinks
about this lot and its connection kind of over here. We have NFP, right? This is a whole big parcel, which is apartments now, but do we just want to kind of connect up to make sure? I mean, that's undeveloped and large. And
yeah, I would definitely, the one just south of Middlebury. Yeah, I had that one marked as well.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know how much time okay, I'll try to make this brief. At the end of the soccer field, the rectangular green there, does that belong to the school?
Yes, that's owned by, this is one whole parcel owned by the school here that I'm outlining.
Okay, yeah, I remember it. It is very wooded, but I thought, okay, when the apartments were being built there by Western, the Vice President of Finance, Bob Beam, he had me put a 10-foot high fence in behind all the soccer fields, and even at the south end of that green parcel, because the thought was that they were going to expand the soccer fields that way. Okay, just sorry.
Yeah, there's been a lot of development pressure in this area for sure.
Yeah, so I personally would like to see us thoughtfully include some parcels kind of just over on the north side of Kendall, north of Weaver. And then I agree that the area just south of where Middlebury ends. And then I would be okay with approving that whole section.
I agree with Ashley. I think I struggle with that a little bit too, but we never made any minimum requirements for a parcel to be included in the NFP. And unless we have that, I think we have to include the little residential ones because the natural features obviously span the parcel boundaries, even though the parcel boundaries stop. So.
Well, and I think, and I think talking too much about, like, you know, is it private or residential, like, or whatever. I mean, we're thinking about the future, no matter who owns it, right? So we included all of Western because it could change hands in the future, and we want to make sure it's protected. And I feel the same way about these spots. I just think I'd like to see them in there for sure.
Okay, so I think I have a good sense of we want to include those parcels on between Stockbridge and Lake according to the way the public comment was written. And then also I will capture that parcel sort of south along Middlebury Drive, and then trying to, I'll add parcels into the recommendation to the Plan Commission that are the backyards of those residential parcels that kind of will tuck into that kind of gap along Kendall that are those that are heavily wooded. There is also quite a bit of slope back there. So I think that's a nice, that when I looked at it, you know, we have at least two natural features aligning there. I apologize. My internet's pretty unstable, it keeps telling me. So I'm turning my camera off to see if you all freeze less.
And, you know, I think if we get obsessed with perfection on this map, that we'll never vote to approve it. And I think that when I've been going through all the public comments, and I feel like we may not be perfect on absolutely everything, but I do feel like we've captured, with aside from the two places I just mentioned, I do feel like we've captured at least most of what people wanted. And, you know, we can stock public comments for the next time, you know, the feedback we get in a few years if this map needs to be redone. But I do think that, you know, it's, in my opinion, is it's more important to get this new map for development that may be in the near future.
Totally agree.
Great.
Yeah, same here.
Why don't I move on and cover the, I'm going to share my screen here again and cover the text amendments. And if we can move through those in the next few minutes, then we can listen to any public comments that we have before you guys make a motion to adopt anything, or recommend, I should say. So here I wanted to show you three different amendments that I, again, feel like will just add some clarity and make for some better implementation and review of projects as they come through the board for the next year. So one of them is Section K, Site Development Standards. This has to do with planting. So the way it reads right now, it's very unclear to someone interpreting or trying to apply the code. It's unclear as to what all site landscaping means instead of just landscaping, and is generally thought of in the site plan review folks world as all the landscaping that's required under the code. And this is what a lot of development meets as their minimum. They're only putting in what's required. So that's outlined in Appendix A, Section 6.2, Landscaping and Open Space Requirements. And then I added or elsewhere in Chapter 50, just so that anything that's required to be planted on the site must be native species. And then, you know, the way it's written, no matter what landscaping you select, none of it can be from the prohibited planting list. And I know that's kind of a phase 2 for us to start thinking about how do we improve that list or make it reference something that's always up to date. But then the last part, I thought, just to make sure that we don't, if we have a tree species or one shrub species this has come up in review, that we don't have to send someone back, you know, stop review, send them back, have them fill out and work toward a variance and then come back to the board. It just seems like it could be smoother to give you as the board some ability to allow some non-native, non-invasive species determined to not cause adverse impacts. And that's going to be on the board then to sort of judge through that lens. And then you would have to approve as a majority of the board that you would allow certain non-native plant species on a case-by-case basis. And that would give you the flexibility during the review, again, when it's perhaps that one tree that you would otherwise have approved, you could have some of that delegated power or authority.
So it'll say that native plants should, something to the effect of they should make up the majority of the site landscaping. It says native species must be used for all site landscaping, and then there's sort of the additional caveat. So it seems like the main message is that they should be using native plants, but we give ourselves some flexibility. Is that kind of how you see it, Jamie?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, so it basically says all of the minimum required landscaping, you know, the shrub every 6 foot on center along the main street, right? There's all of this kind of requirement, shrubs on all sides of the buildings or at the entrance. All of that must be native. And that's what the majority of, I would say the majority of sites build to. And then if a development chooses to put more landscaping in above the minimum, that the board would make the decision to allow only that amount to be a non-native, non-invasive species with permission, essentially. The next section, L, is the NFP review bodies and process. And the edits here would leave in place sort of the big triggers that we thought should make a site applicant have to notice all of the neighbors that they're going through a rezoning, if they're going to the Zoning Board of Appeals for that variance, and if their site's adjacent to land that's used by the public, right? Because then all of the stakeholders around that parcel have perhaps a very strong interest in what happens on that land. So what we had though was one natural feature that was sort of arbitrarily added in there. I don't really remember it having a strong rationale when we developed the language, and we threw out anything within 100 foot of a wetland or a water resource. And that one tends to, I guess, like I said, just feel a little arbitrary. We're not requiring other natural features. And so if we have any of those big three, the 1, 2, 3, that will require noticing of all parcels within 300 feet of the project, postmarked 14 days prior to the review meeting. We make them do that before they go for the variance. We make them do that again before they come to your board. So it really keeps the public engaged in what's happening on that property. And then the last one here I'd really like you guys to weigh in on is section M, it's bonding of projects. I had a couple of conversations with staff in my department talking about how, you know, we bond for other projects, whether we use this idea of a lien for a smaller parcel. And bonding is by far gives us the most assurance that we'll have a financial backing to anything that gets unintentionally, well, destroyed or not restored according to the site plan. And I thought that maybe this was another part of the zoning code where it makes sense to give the board a bit more control in making this decision on a case-by-case basis. So when using that kind of checklist that we're trying to develop that will kind of look at every natural feature, I think just at the end, we would add a section on bonding and let the board decide whether it's appropriate, no matter if it's a $10 million project or a $50,000 or $100,000 addition. If there are, and your analysis would be based, you know, on the ecological and economic value of natural features either located on the site or if they're proposed to be restored, right? If they're putting in a buffer or they're doing tree replacement. And then also weighing that against the likelihood that there's enough activity on the site that you think there could be some adverse impacts. And then we would require that construction bond for 3 years to, you know, make sure if anything happened on that site that there would be dollars there for the applicant to repair, although I understand restoration is a poor second choice to keeping the natural landscape there. But
so is it essentially mean they set aside financial resources at the outset of their project so that if that kind of just holding it there for assurance so that if the natural features are impacted, then there's already money set aside and they can't claim undue burden or something like that?
essentially, right, it's a bond that they, you know, purchase and have in place that, yes, has a dollar value connected to it, that they do pay a portion of that to the bonding agency, and then it stays in place for however long that the bond is purchased, and then it gets released once the project is done. Paul, I don't know, maybe you've talked a bit about your experience with bonds versus warranties on plants or replacement guarantees.
Yeah, that was my biggest gripe. It just sour apples. No, I see this. Will there be somebody to, will the planning commission help to decide how big that bond should be? Is there some parameters or something that?
No, it would not be the plan commission. There is some language, and maybe you all want to check that out sort of just under the same section. There is some language on how that gets calculated, and it's sort of left up to the boards or staff. It's quite vague in that section. So that is something that I would love us to work on in the next year. If we have sort of a calculator tool that we could add into our review as well, or maybe we actually put the burden on the applicant to say, would you calculate what it would cost for you to replace these parts of your project? I mean, they're going to have those line items likely in their building specifications, so we could just go off of those dollars. But yeah, it's very vague right now, I will say.
Okay.
Do we have any last one or two comments? Anything in here that these revisions you would caution staff not to recommend them, that you want to wait maybe until next year to bring up any changes?
As someone who's going through the NFP process right now as an applicant, I think the less back and forth is definitely helpful. I think it helps us, and I think it will help the applicant as long as we have the same sort of standards and the intent is still there. Then I would support that.
Paul?
Yeah, I move that we accept the changes as they're laid out there. You had it written out what the motion would be.
Yeah, Paul. So before, I like where you're going, because we have about 10 minutes remaining. I'd like to ask Neil or Joe if we have any public comments from this part of the.
We have one public comment. I'll play that now for you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tina McQuinton. I live at 310 Lake Street, the property you're talking about right now between Lake and Stockbridge. I am calling because we have been trying to save this last piece of green space on Lake Street for the past 4 years. We had 12 more acres across the street, and they took it away to build KBCC Growinville. This little bit of land is 5 acres. It's 60% wetlands, it's 40% on a floodplain, and it has its own natural watershed that helps our homes with flooding. See, we flood 2 to 3 times a year now since they took away the 12 acres, and I'm so afraid if you take away this part of woods and do not protect this little green space, our whole homes will be underwater. That is our concerns with it. We have lots of nature that live there. We have deer, we have foxes, we have hawks, we have pictures of the owls. We have tons of frogs, tons of different birds that all live there. And we've been trying to save this. I really wish you would consider saving this last green space that's left in our neighborhood. I enjoy it. The kids enjoy seeing the deer. It's a wonderful little bitty piece of woods. It's our little country in the city. Please help save it. Thank you.
That's the only comment for this comment period.
I seem to remember at a Kalamazoo environmental council meeting that the same group was, or that there was some pleas to save this property. That was like, what, about a year ago, maybe a little more. So.
Well, I think, we've covered that area, and it sounds like, Paul, if you're ready to make a motion, it's on the agenda, so I can let Mitch read it and maybe comment on adding the area at Stockbridge and Lake, the area near Kendall. Those are the 2 areas, I guess.
Yeah, so it would be to entertain a motion to approve the amendment to the Natural Features Protection Overlay District and related zoning code and recommend adoption by the Kalamazoo Planning Commission, including the Lake and Stockbridge area that was discussed, as well as the Arboretum Parkway areas and the text amendments that Jamie went over. So can I entertain a motion to pass that recommendation?
So moved.
Yes.
Okay.
Or-
Support? All
And then
right,
we'll do a roll call vote if you don't mind, Mitch.
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Colwick,
Yay.
Fuller,
Yay.
Glasser,
Yes.
Leto,
Yay.
McNellis,
Yes.
and Martin.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so motion carries.
Very good.
Let me, oh, well, you can get through the rest of the agenda. I'll do it under staff announcements, Mitch.
Okay. So I guess we're at the citizen comments. Any last board comments before looks like we've got
Oh,
about 5
I'm
minutes
sorry,
here.
Mitch. Is it general public comments next? We did allow people to distinguish and
Oh, okay.
submit those
Gotcha.
separately. So Joe, do we have any general public comments?
We have no other comments.
Wonderful, thanks.
A board comment.
Shoot.
Oh, I didn't know if I was muted. I would just like to revisit the species list the next time we address this, both the prohibited and we discussed suggested species list. And I know, Jamie, I sent you some recommendations, but they're really hodgepodge. And I think that maybe, going through them very intentionally is kind of what I see as a next step.
You know, Ashley, I think you're right. You thank you for the work that you did. And I felt like we tried to kind of, and I probably didn't do a good enough job, right? But I tried to kind of spur some conversation by email, and we tried to do it in a meeting, but we're getting busier and busier. And with a bigger overlay, I see that continuing. And so maybe we could recommend that the chair suggest or appoint a subcommittee. That could be a really good group of 3 or 4 people, and then bring a recommendation to the board. So that's something we could do in the next 1 to 2 quarters.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you.
Jamie, I had a couple other comments, but I know we're running low on time related to what we discussed today. So I'll just email you about those.
Great. I have just
Okay.
one staff update. So next week we'll be mailing out the notices to everybody who's on this recommended overlay district. And then staff will be holding a town hall, a virtual town hall meeting. It is on, or it should be up today or tomorrow on the NFP Phase 2 website, but it's a virtual town hall on Wednesday, October 28th at 6 p.m. I will be there. Christina Anderson is going to lead us through all the questions. We're going to let people leave questions the same way. I'll probably start answering some of the questions also that are submitted by email, and then Bobby Durkee will be joining us too. So if any of you all want to join in and hear what people have to say, or I would at least say if we could have a representation from the committee at the November 5th Planning Commission meeting too, that could be really valuable. There will likely be questions that come up from the board members, the planning commissioners, to myself as staff, but then if we have other board members there from the NFP review board, that would just help strengthen the recommendation, I would say.
Great. Okay, anything else, Jamie, before we adjourn the meeting?
We are going to be holding our October 27, our regular NFP review board meeting in 2 weeks. Right now, it looks like we have 3 cases to review. And so I'm excited to be able to bring those forth. It looks like we're going to be reviewing the Bow in the Clouds project for just its overall approval of its site plan for NFP. We have a variance request from that 500 Golden Drive property the additional gardens that they want to put in. So I'll be they've submitted all of their stuff and I'll be getting that out to you guys in the next week. I want to give you guys a little bit more lead time on some of the reviews. And then the third project is actually at the city's water reclamation plant, and it has to do with some air filter, biofilter kind of infrastructure they're putting in there, which it's adjacent to the river. It looks like it's mostly impacting areas that are already sort of mowed parking areas, but there are some wetlands concerns. And so they're looking for a site plan review and approval.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, 4:58, just a couple minutes to spare. Happy to adjourn the meeting if no one has any further comments.
Okay.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks,
Yes,
everyone.
thank you, Mitch.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Stay tuned.
Everyone.
We'll continue this
Thank you.
journey.
Bye.